Les and Marion one time. What I don't know what lake we went to.
Oh, I think just out of
here.
Hill, yeah. Is that Chin Lake?
Chin, yeah.
He caught a fish and he decided to throw it back. But before he threw it back, he stuck it in Marion's face and said, "Do you want to kiss the fish goodbye?" And she just about jumped out of the boat.
I'm not touching nothing.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
so now we have a grandson, and I was out fishing with the grandson. I had the same situation. The grandson was like 4 or 5 years old. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to throw the fish back." So I said, "But you want to kiss the fish goodbye?" You know, of course, when they're younger, they don't figure out the comedy and all of it sometimes. No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I probably don't know anybody here anymore. I used to be pretty close.
Yeah, well,
We were close to the Handleys. We were really close to the Handleys.
the women are all cousins here.
Long way away.
Good to see you. Sorry, so I'm going to do this. She broke her arm.
Yeah, did well, eh?
Sorry, oh, you're a left bridge.
We both got broke. We both got broke. I was just standing there and I fell over and I broke my collarbone. A week later, she broke her arm. And I said, I was getting better. She wasn't, so we went into clinic. We got dressed up and I'm trying to picture the kids in the They both reacted and said, "Oh,
Just I like that. The cars always warm.
Yeah.
hard to put it together now.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Good afternoon and welcome. I want to thank everyone for joining us as we celebrate the amazing life of Phyllis Julia Handley and the incredible legacy that she has left behind. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tara Wenstop, and I am Phyllis's granddaughter. Grandma was an incredible person, both inside and out. Her door was always open to visitors. She had an amazing, quick wit. And even though she might not tell you all the time, she loved you with her whole heart. Thank you to everyone for the phone calls, prayers, and support given to our family. Every morning, Phyllis and Phyllis Melody and Phyllis would recite the Lord's Prayer. So it only seems fitting that we start our celebration of Phyllis's life doing the same. Please join along with the recording of Melody and Phyllis taken just before Phyllis's 104th birthday.
Our Father, who art
Art
in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I would now like to welcome Phyllis's grandson, Mark Sholigan, to read the obituary.
Phyllis Julia Handley passed away peacefully on December 15th, 2024 at Rochester, Alberta at the age of 104. Phyllis was born April 29th, 1920 in Empress, Alberta to parents Annie and Richard Hopkins. She married Lester Handley in 1944. Together they raised two amazing sons, Ron and Roger, and Melody. Phyllis was a teacher. Love you, Mom. Told ya.
Which one pays you?
Well, they owe me now. Phyllis was a teacher as a younger woman, and then later worked along side by side with her husband in the manufacturing, auction, and real estate businesses as a cashier and bookkeeper. Phyllis loved to dance, travel, make ceramics, sew, and later in life, she was Les's fishing companion. Her door was always open for company. Her trademark was her welcoming smile. Phyllis was predeceased by her parents, Annie and Richard Hopkins, husband Lester Handley, sister Mary Giddens and Jerry, brother Ken Hopkins, brother Gordon Hopkins and Polly, grandchildren Brad Handley, Dana Sholigan, Laura Sholigan, and son-in-law Patrick Sholigan. Remaining to cherish Phyllis' memory is her children, Ron and Melina Handley, Roger and Kathy Handley, and Melody Sholigan, her grandchildren, Mike Handley, Brett Handley, Brock Handley, Mark and Joanne Sholigan, Tara and Doug Wenstob, Keith and Anna Sholigan, and Corey Handley. And her great-grandchildren, Brock Handley, Lee Sholigan, Faith Sholigan, Cassie Wenstob, Haley Wenstob, Jace Wenstob, Cole Wenstob, Will Sholigan, Sam Sholigan, Ben Sholigan, August Sholigan, Matthew Sholigan, and Phyllis's many loved nieces and nephews and her cherished friends. Thank you.
We will now enjoy listening to one of Phyllis's favorite songs, In the Garden, led by Anna Sholigan, grandson Keith's wife. And I believe you should have a sheet that you can read along with you. Sing along.
We can all sing along. Yes, please. We're not just listening, we're singing.
Next, we have a slideshow for you that Melody has created and I'll read along with. Phyllis Julia was born on April 29th, 1920, to parents Richard and Annie Hopkins. She had a sister, Mary, and two brothers, Ken and Gordon. Growing up in the 1920s and 30s wasn't a walk in the park. Phyllis lost her dad when she was only 7 years old. There were lots of chores to do, and everyone in the family had to pull their weight. Phyllis used to complain that she had washwoman's knees from when she was younger and had to wash other people's floors. Phyllis went to Calgary to normal school to get her teaching degree, finding jobs in the classrooms of Glavana, Empress, Iron Springs, and Coaldale. She met Lester Handley at a dance in Iron Springs. They were married on August 22nd, 1944, first living on the farm in the Turin area, then later moving into Coaldale, where they raised 3 children, Ron, Roger, and Melody. Her home was always open to company and a good time. One summer she said that she made at least 1 extra bed up every day of the month for company, and often it wasn't just one visitor, but rather a whole family, and sometimes more than one. They say behind every good man there's a good woman. That was definitely true for Lester. Les made his living being a real estate agent and an auctioneer. Phyllis was the one who cashiered every sale and did all the bookwork. It was no easy task. Clerk Fred Burton once wrote out on a bill for a customer that simply said 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. Without skipping a beat, Phyllis figured it out, meaning a 2-2 train was sold to customer number 2 for $2. When Phyllis closed out each sale, she would not rest until it was completely balanced to the penny. Phyllis loved to watch baseball and hockey, a real sports enthusiast. However, water skiing was not one of Phyllis's favorite sports. She was successful at it, though. Her first crack at it, she lifted up, kept her balance, and away across Chin Lake Les sped. Phyllis wanted desperately to stop and would lower herself a little until she felt the cold water below, then she would stand up again. She wouldn't yell out because she was afraid that she would lose her false teeth. As Les drew close to the spillway with the boat, Phyllis finally figured that she'd have to let go of the rope, or else Les might never take her back to shore until he ran out of gas. Phyllis loved to dance, but Les was generally on stage playing the fiddle in the orchestra. Now, that didn't mean that Phyllis just sat alone all night. She was the most popular gal out on the dance floor, and when the other men weren't available, it was nothing in those days for two women to dance together. As Phyllis got older, she became Les's best fishing companion. Her eyesight was better, and her patience was longer, so that she could untangle the fishing line. Les was always happy to have Phyllis with him, as long as she wasn't trying to steer the boat while reading her book, which she frequently did. Often in her old age, as she was driving along, she would see the cattle in the pasture grazing, and she would comment, "Oh, look, the cattle are eating, the fish must be biting," an old saying of Lester's. Phyllis loved to travel. It didn't take her more than 5 minutes of meeting someone new, and she had a connection made. She would figure out where a person was from or who they were married to, and she would make a connection to someone that she knew. Phyllis and Les hosted a trip to the land of the kangaroos and koalas, hula hooped in Hawaii, traveled to Spain, visited Nice Sharon in the Arctic, and traveled to eastern Canada with Gordon and Polly and Myrna and Parker. As they got older, Les and Phyllis spent their winters in Arizona. One of Phyllis's many talents was sewing. She would stay up through the night sewing shirts for the boys, sewed all of Melody's clothes except for the jeans, and dresses for her mother. When her mother would question how something wasn't fitting or feeling right, Phyllis would nonchalantly answer, "Oh, Mother, nobody is going to be looking at you anyway to notice if it fits." Phyllis sewed for her neighbors and friends, doing alterations, and even made quite a few wedding dresses for family and friends. When she sewed for her grandkids, and then later her great-grandkids, she would always mix the colors up on their pajama sleeves and body to use up every last scrap of fabric. Phyllis was always open to dressing up and having a good time. At one Halloween dance, she dressed up in a bear costume, which she had made from an Arctic survival suit. She styled a heavy sweater into the head and stitched it onto the suit so no one could remove her mask. You can only imagine how sweltering it must have been. She waited in the car so no one would guess that she had arrived with the band, then came sauntering in and plunked herself down between the men as if she was one of the good old boys. No one guessed her real identity, but she didn't get many dances that night. Phyllis always kept herself active and in shape. She played baseball as a young woman, could run like a deer, and later in life maintained a regiment of doing 100 exercises of some form or another every morning. Phyllis worked hard to keep her mind active and alert. She would often be heard reciting poems. Let's listen as she recites from memory the grandchildren's favorite poem, 20 Froggies.
20 froggies went to school down beside our rusty pool. 20 little coats of green, 20 vests all white and clean. We will be in time, said they. First we study, then we play. That is how we keep the rule when we froggies go to school. Master Bullfrog, grave and stern, called the classes in their turn, taught them how to nobly strive, likewise how to leap and dive. From his seat upon a log, showed them how to say kerchog, also how to dodge a blow from the sticks which bad boys throw. 20 froggies grew up fast, bullfrogs they became at last. Not one dunce was in the lot, not one lesson they forgot. Polished to a high degree, as each froggy ought to be, now they sit on other logs, teaching other little frogs.
Phyllis loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She was always open to babysitting her grandkids and loved to snuggle with her nieces and nephews' kids too. She would cuddle and read stories with strange voices, and she never lost her touch, even with when the great-grandkids came along.
Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them. Oh, I do not like them. I do not like green eggs and ham. Would you like them here or there? I would not like them here or there. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Phyllis also supported her grandchildren and great-grandchildren by attending their 4-H and cattle shows. She loved to see the cattle and was so very proud of her grandkids. Phyllis loved to play all sorts of games, especially bridge and crib. When she moved into the condo here in Lethbridge, she became active in the various card tournaments and monthly socials. You might remember that she always supplied the bucket of ice cream at the monthly potluck. Along with sewing, painting, and card games, another hobby was ceramics. You will see at the display tables some of the items Phyllis painted. If you have not already been given a dish, please feel free to choose one to take home as a memento of Phyllis. Phyllis had a positive outlook on life right up to the end. She was grateful to Ron for installing the lift at Melody's house to make it easier for her to get out and enjoy life. Last summer, Phyllis took part in the annual Sholigan Cousin Campout. Every morning, Phyllis and Melody would drive out to Forfar Lake to join the family campers, and Phyllis would relax in the netted tent while the family enjoyed their time at the lake, then back to their campsite for meals. Each evening, they would travel back to sleep in their own beds, just to do it again the next day. She didn't complain once about all the running around, even though it tired her out. On the inside of your pamphlet, you will find the 23rd Psalm, one of Phyllis's most cherished scripture passages that she recited every night before bed. Please join in reciting these verses with Phyllis.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen.
I'll now ask Uncle Ron Handley up to share his special memories.
Thank you, Tara. How can I possibly broil down into a few short words the 70 plus years of fond memories of one of the most kindest, loving, caring, smartest, wittiest, unselfish human being that God has ever placed on this planet. When we are born, we don't have a say in who our mother and father will be or are. But if we could, I wouldn't trade what I had for anything. Mom was special and truly loved by her family, relatives, and many friends. Her smile and demeanor, her probing questions, her personality radiated the room whenever she was present. She could be tough too, though, and very little ever got by her. I remember one time she was substitute teaching at Baker Junior High. At the back of the class, Willie Wilms was goofing off a bit, and I guess she'd had enough of his inattentiveness and disruptiveness. Sending him to the office to be dealt with by the principal would have been the easy route. But instead, she just walked halfway down the aisle, put her hands on her hips, looked at Willie, and said, "Willie, I put up with many years of driving you and your mates to scout camp, to baseball games, while you and your mates farted and sang toot toot the musical fruit, the more you eat, the more you eat. Beans, beans, the musical fruit, the more you eat, the more you toot. Well, you stank up my car enough. I put up with it. I'm not putting up with your mess now." Well, after the uproarious laughter stopped, Willie kind of cringed down to his seat, and Willie was a perfect angel after that. What I remember most fondly was the cheering and rooting at the ball games. Her and Grandpa would be sitting on the hood of Grandpa's green 58 Chevy, parked down the right field foul line. The first base umpires got to know her real well. But mostly, she just cheered us on. Another fond memory of the cheering was at a game in Lethbridge. Uncle Jerry was visiting from Vancouver, and he and Mom were sitting in the stands when I hit a home run. Uncle Jerry started cheering wildly, yelling, "That's my boy, that's my boy." Well, another super supporter of our team was Harold Heglin's mom. Feisty Mrs. Heglin took a little exception to Uncle Jerry claiming me as his son and said, "He's not your son." Well, Mom had to get between them and explain that Uncle Jerry was her brother-in-law. So after the peace was resolved and a good laugh was had by all, they went on to cheering, and I think we won that game. But how could we not with the support that we were getting? Many other memories are special to me. Things like riding in the back of a pickup on a freezing cold night, huddled under blankets while Dad drove wildly down the gravel roads. Mom would point out the constellations, name some of the stars in the constellations, and quiz me on them. Cassiopeia, Orion, and the Big Dipper were our favorites. Hours spent playing crib and watching with amazement her knock off another crossword puzzle were things that are special to me. Also, things like helping me with my homework, and especially getting my English correct. Parts of speech and sentence structure were her specialty. She loved making me rehearse poetry. You know, you've already heard about the poetry. She would make me go over and over. I still remember some of them. Johnny Appleseed, of Jonathan Chapman, "Two things are known, that he loved apples, that he walked alone." Or the cremation of Sam McGee. "There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen strange sights, but the strangest they ever did see was the night on the marge of Lake Labarge when I cremated Sam McGee." Many studies have shown that as we age, our memory starts to slip. We might remember things that happened long ago, but not what happened last week. Well, Mom was no exception to this. And one of the things that she remembered has been a thorn in Roger and Melody's side for a little while now. What kept haunting her was the memory of a tough discipline that she applied to my derriere when I was a brat, as I guess a toddler. So for the last 5 to 10 years, her memory was reaching back 100 years. She was remember breaking a few wooden spoons or hairbrushes on my backside because I'd been a bad boy. At all our, I think what was happening, I got the rod and Melody and Roger got spoiled. Anyway, at the end of all our family reunions and visits lately, at the end of the day, Mom would be holding my hand and begging me for forgiveness. No matter how many times I told her she was forgiven, the next time we'd meet, the same guilt came through. You also know that her hearing was failing ever more recently. Well, now that she's in heaven and can hear perfectly, Mom, I forgive you. All the wooden spoons and hairbrushes are put back together. Please rest in peace and know that we all love you and miss you terribly. Thank you all for coming.
Roger Handley will be next to share.
First of all, Ron's lucky that there wasn't a Costco back then. Mom had to run to town and get a new wooden spoon every once in a while. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd also like to thank our West Coast cousins for bringing all the rain. We needed it desperately. What an amazing woman. I have heard this about Mom from many, many people. She definitely was. And I think part of it was because she was always thought the best of people and took an interest in their lives. She also had a great memory. Many times she would talk about someone, recite who their children were, and oftentimes she would tell you when their birthdays were. And it was people that not necessarily close friends. But she remembered everything. Mom was a teacher by trade and then a bookkeeper and cashier at the auctions. Mom didn't go to bed until the checks and cash reconciled to the penny with the receipts. Not an easy task when often we had auctions 5 days a week, but she stayed up until they were balanced 100%. Mom also had a mischievous side to her. I remember her telling me that her and Bev Perry slipped away from a wedding and short-sheeted the bride and groom's bed. Also, the first time that Fergie and Charlotte Russell stopped in for coffee, he complained about the size of the spoon for the sugar. So next time, Mom went into her collection and found the smallest little collector spoon she could find. And I'm sorry, I had it and I left it in my other jacket. Mom also had a stubborn side to her. Mom and Dad were returning from Arizona one time. Mom was driving, and they're getting close to Shelby. Dad wanted her to stop and get gas in Shelby. She said, no, I think we'll go to Sweetgrass. We'll get gas in Sweetgrass. Of course, the argument ensued a little bit, but Mom, right by the turnoff, she admitted later that she sweated bullets for the whole 30 miles because she couldn't remember 100% that there was a gas station in Sweetgrass. Also, Mom, Fred Burton, and myself would often travel together to the auction sales, and as we passed by various farm sites, we would reminisce about whose auction sale we had there and whose so on and so forth. Well, one time we passed by a farm, Fred and I both said it was Joe Blow's auction sale. Mom insisted it was Sam Smith's sale. We argued back and forth. Eventually, we agreed with Mom, because Mom remembered everything. We found out many, many years later, she admitted we were right and she was wrong. So I asked her, well, why did you argue so hard? She said, so I figured if I argued long enough, you guys would believe me. And we did. Mom was a teacher, bookkeeper, chauffeur, but mostly she was a great mom. Oftentimes when Mom would go with Dad when he was playing for dances, she was fortunate that he had someone always asking her for a dance. But she had a favorite dance, Call of the Pipe, and Dad would put down his fiddle and go dance with Mom. So Dad, get ready to put your fiddle down. Mom is coming soon to have her dance. Thank you.
And now Melody Sholigan is going to come and share her special memories.
Oh, so many memories. Where do I start? I was blessed to have Mom live with me for the last 2.5 years of her life. She was always pleasant, cooperative, and so full of life and love. The other week as I was driving home, I spotted a healthy black bear close to my turnoff on the highway. My first thought was, oh, wow, I can't wait to tell Mom. And then reality hit me. But I'm sure she saw it there. My favorite story that Mom used to tell was when she first started teaching. It was Christmas and the boys in her class decided to have a little fun by wrapping up a mouse in a small box and gifting it to Jean Nicol, who was known for her dramatics. Of course, when Jean opened the gift, the mouse had suffocated and was lifeless. But that didn't stop the hysterics. Mom, in her most authoritative voice, said, "Give me that mouse," and she held her hand out. The boys reluctantly retrieved the mouse and dropped it in her hand. Then Mom marched over to the pot-bellied stove and threw it in. I don't know how she did it. I'd have been the first one screaming. She was so brave. Just as long as it wasn't a snake, she could handle pretty much anything. In fact, Mom couldn't even handle looking at a picture of a snake. One time the newspaper came out with a picture of a coiled up snake on the front page. That page was out to the burning bush immediately, and it was not carried there by Mom. Another memory I have is that when Mom painted, she wore a pair of panties over her head to keep the paint from splashing in her hair. At Mom's birthday parties in the last 10 years, we often had the great-grandkids act out the scene with paintbrushes in hand and underwear on their heads. I always thought my mom was the most beautiful lady as I was growing up, but she would laugh when I'd say that, and she'd tell me it was just the thought that got planted in my head. She told me how she and Barb Sturrock had a deal that whenever they were in public, they would say nice and loud things like, "Wow, Barb, nice hairstyle," and Barb would likewise flatter Mom. They figured that way they planted in other people's minds that they looked okay, even if in reality they were having a very bad hair day. Another memory I have as a kid was the way Mom always did the things quickly. When we did the dishes, she tried to lure me into helping by saying, "Come on, let's see if we can finish these up in about 4 minutes," or however minutes she thought it would take. To be in record speed, of course. She even walked fast. One time, Mom, Jeannie Graham, and I were walking along the sidewalk, and Jeannie started an exaggerated jog. Mom burst into laughter, realizing that she was going at a fair clip. She slowed down for our shorter legs. If you recognize this blouse, I'm wearing it in memory of Mom. One time when I phoned, she told me how embarrassed she was and why hadn't I said anything to her about her navy outfit with the flowers. Well, I didn't understand her problem, and I replied, "Oh, I love that outfit on you. It's my favorite." She proceeded to tell me that how she'd been sitting that day in a waiting room wearing her outfit, and a lady sitting beside her said, "Oh, I like your skirt and blouse. Too bad the flowers aren't the same," or something close to that. Mom was horrified when she looked down to see that they most definitely were not the same kind of flowers, and it most definitely was not an outfit. and she never wore them separate, or never wore them together again. Mom looked forward to getting your phone calls, even though her hearing had diminished, and she would hang up, and then she would lament about how badly she felt about always having to ask you to repeat things. So thank you for calling to check in on her when she moved up north with me, and thank you for being tolerant and patient with repeating. Mom had a deep, quiet faith in God. When I was a typical teenager and whined about getting up on Sunday morning to go to church, Mom would admonish me with, "Look at all that God has done for you. Surely you can give back at least 1 hour to him to say thank you." And even after she was unable to drive herself to church on Sundays, she would feed herself with reading the Bible and watching the various preachers on TV. As Tara had already mentioned, Mom started her days off with prayer until the day she passed away. I'll finish up with my favorite memory. As a little girl, I found comfort in playing with my mom's earlobes and getting my back scratched. When Mom moved in with me, I would tuck her in each night, and our routine always ended with Mom scratching my back for a few minutes. Even when we had company, Mom would scratch their backs when they came into the bedroom to say goodnight. One night, while my family was sitting around the fire and I'd already put Mom to bed, my grandson Will had an itchy back and asked for someone to scratch his back for him. Both Anna and I reached to scratch his back when my grandson Ben said, "Well, you know, that's really a waste of time to have someone other than Gram scratching." It was never as good. Whether she was called Gram, Grandma, Mom, Auntie, friend, or just Phyllis, we are blessed to have our own sweet memories of how she touched our lives. Thank you.
Anna is going to come up again to lead us in How Great Thou Art. The first time that Phyllis met Les, it was at a dance in Iron Springs. Phyllis went up to Lester, the orchestra fiddle player, and requested they play Call of the Pipe. And the rest, they say, is history. We will end the formal part of this gathering by listening to the Call of the Pipes played from the Handley's Old Timers record, then open up the mic if anyone has a special memory that they would like to share. If anybody does have a special memory of Grandma that they would like to come up and share, we just ask that you introduce yourself and then share the memory. Sheila?
I'm a Handley through marriage, but I feel like a Hopkins or a Handley, a real Handley, because I've been treated that way. Auntie Phyllis was a marvelous lady, and we had a granddaughter who had a bad accident, and she was a quadriplegic in a wheelchair. And she moved into an apartment, and Auntie Phyllis would always ask us about our kids. They mattered as much to her as any of her grandkids. She wanted to know everything about them and all about them. And I think she must have been 95. She was in the condo and we came to visit. And she asked me how my granddaughter was doing. I said, oh, she's doing good. And then she talked about one of my other granddaughters that had lived with her. And I said, no, I didn't have another granddaughter live with her. Oh, yeah, you did. And I said, no. And she just kind of, And a little while later I said, holy cow, I did have another granddaughter that lived with her. And here was Auntie Phyllis at 95 remembering that. And I had forgotten it. She was marvelous for a memory and knowing people and names and things. We just loved her. She was great. And I saw the picture. I was fooled by my husband, Handley. As a family, our family, I was the youngest, 4 years younger than the next one. We never played cards or anything. We never had family games. And when I started dating Dick, we got to go to all these family Christmases at Handley's and play the games and everything. So I thought, wow, this is great. And he never played games with me until he retired a few years ago. So I felt cheated. And I've told him that. That was one of the key reasons that, everything was great with him. But I saw the picture in the bathing suits. Where's Melody? I remember that Christmas.
that was one of the Christmases at your folks and where you played games, and it was wonderful. But I remember the girls getting in their bathing suits 'cause it was so warm that Christmas. So. Oh, really? Anyway, it was fun. It was always fun. Dick probably has things to say too, but he's quiet.
Grandma was definitely a card shark. She loved to play all the games and was very good at winning.
Hi, my name is Josephine Ebner, and I was the hairdresser in Coaldale. And I moved into Phyllis's building about 7 years ago, and when Phyllis found out, she had me come and do her hair. Well, she walked over to my house, and I did her hair every Friday. And when she couldn't walk over anymore, I went over to her place and did her hair every Friday because she had to look nice. She had to have her hair done every week. And she even got up, she didn't like to get up early. And she'd even get up early because I didn't like to work late. and I had retired, so, but she came, we did her hair every Friday. And then when she moved up with Melody, when they came down to visit, they would call and she would come over and have her hair done while she was down here visiting. And when Melody phoned to tell me she'd passed, I thought she was phoning because she wanted to come down and have a perm. So I just loved doing her hair because she would remember everything. And she'd get really mad at herself when she forgot something until she remembered it again, and then she would be happy again. So thanks.
I was lucky enough to come down here with Tara a couple times to visit Mrs. Handley, and I definitely remember her being a card shark. And the funniest memory I have of her is Cassie was a baby, and we had put her to bed. And so then the crib board came out. And I'm not very good at crib. Tara usually, has to count my points for me. I always miss points. But I'd had a couple good rounds. And I remember Mrs. Handley slamming a card down on the table, looking me directly in the eye and saying, 15 that. And I never forget that she was, this woman in her 90s, and she resoundingly beat me at crib. It was a good time.
She didn't introduce herself, but that's my friend Crystal. Keith?
Keith Sholigan, I'm Melody's son. Most of you guys know me. But Grandma, I'm going to miss her. She used to get her hair done every week, and I used to promptly mess it up every time I saw her. There was something about her perm. I'd just go in there and just mess it up every single time. And she never got mad at me once. And I did it right till she was 104, constantly. And I miss that. When I started playing football, I would go to her house after school, and I would get dressed and then go to practice. And then I'd go back, and I'd never want to go home, and I'd always want to stay. And I just loved that. And the few times that my mother let me, there was nothing better than waking up and watching cartoons and get to come back for lunch and just spending time with her. It was just amazing. And when she gets her perm and I meet her to have it again, I'm going to mess it up.
Make no mistake, Grandma had cable and we had 4 channels. That's why Keith wanted to stay over. But there were many times when we would stay over and have sleepovers at Grandma and Grandpa's house. And in the morning, Grandpa would say, okay, let's go golfing. And without fail, he'd let us kids drive the cart. And Grandma would be less. But she'd let it slide until the marshals showed up. Do we have any more memories or folks that would like to share?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name's Mike Handley. One of my favorite memories is everyone was still living in Coaldale, and except for myself. And so I would come home for a random holiday. And one of the first things I would do was go over to Grandma's house. And inevitably, we'd put the pot on to make some tea and get some squares out, and the crib board would come out. And one particular day, if you don't know crib that well, the winner gets 121 points. If the loser has 90 or less, it's called a skunk. If the loser has 60 or less points, it's called a double skunk. So we started playing crib, and not only did I win 3 consecutive games in a row, I proceeded to skunk, double skunk, and skunk Grandma. And I'm thinking then in the span of maybe not even a half hour. I thought, okay, we'll play game 4, and all of a sudden Grandma's putting the board away, putting the cards away, and she goes, well, thanks for coming to visit, Mike. I think you should probably get home now. And I was stunned. I've only been here for a half hour. That's not quite the visit, but all of a sudden I'm being ushered out the door. And as I'm walking back to my car, Grandma just kicked me out of her house. I come back to Mom and Dad's house, and I walk in the door, and Mom kind of looks at me. She goes, that wasn't much of a visit. How come you're here? Grandma kicked me out of the house. So that was one of my favorite memories of Grandma.
A cup of tea and chocolate chip cookies, that was what you always had at Grandma's house. And if she didn't have any, you got to help her bake them. And then you got to lick the beaters. But I'm pretty sure growing up, my mom often commented that her lick beaters were always cleaned off before giving her. We were grandkids. We got a full beater. I know Uncle Ron talked about Grandma's parenting. And one time I did get some parenting advice from Grandma when we visited and I had young kids. She said to me after they'd been put to bed, she said, oh, what time do you think they'll wake up in the morning? I said, sometimes they sleep in, but sometimes 6:30 in the morning. She looked at me. Oh, get some chloroform for that. Dick? Sounds good.
Now get through this. One thing you never did was phone Auntie Phyllis on Jeopardy night. Because she wouldn't answer the phone, she was playing it. And she loved those games. But I had the opportunity to stay with her a couple of times. And we just had a great time driving around the country and visiting the old people. Well, old people, old as us. But she was a lovely lady, and I feel real blessed to have had the influence of her and her magnificent husband all those years. And to be born into a family that had great cousins. And I love them all. And I miss them all. And I miss Uncle Les real bad. And I miss Auntie Phyllis too. So thank you all for coming.
Does anybody have any other memories that they'd like to share?
I have to do one more just to really show you how sharp a wit she was. Melody and I were
we're on the elevator at the Medicine Hat Lodge, and we're going up the elevator and looking over the water slides and stuff. We pushed Mom into the elevator in her walker, and looking over the side, looking over the window, the glass elevator, and watching the kids swimming and on the slides. And Melody looked at Grandma, or looked at Mom, and said, "Mom, did you bring your swimming suit?" She said, "No, I'm going to go skinny dipping."
If nobody else has another one that they like, another memory that they would like to share in front of everybody, I'm sure we can share our memories. They have some refreshments at the back that we can all enjoy as we continue to share our memories of Grandma and catch up. I want to thank, on behalf of everybody, of the family, I want to thank everybody for joining us as we celebrate the amazing life of Phyllis Julia Handley. She had an incredible 104 years here on earth, and the lasting legacy that she has left behind is immeasurable. Thank you very much for coming today, and join us for some refreshments, please.